The events unfolding in our world today are unlike anything we have ever seen before. From cyber attacks crippling critical infrastructure to geopolitical instability, economic turbulence, and even unprecedented political division, the landscape of 2024 feels chaotic and overwhelming. The surge in cyber attacks, particularly targeting energy grids and financial systems, the heightened tensions in the Middle East, and the increasingly fragile state of the global economy have caused many to fear for the future.
We have made so much progress, historic progress.
For the first time in U.S. history,
the national debt hit a record high today.
$35 trillion in debt. That's $104,000 per American.
$35 trillion. We did it. Congratulations.
Put it in context for me. How big of a problem is it?
Big. Big, big, big.
This is the biggest threat to the US dollar, as national debt toll ticks higher and higher to the tune of a record-breaking $34 trillion. The future of the dollar seems more and more unsteady. The situation is beyond scary. It's quite frankly terrifying, with a staggering $1 trillion added to the national debt every 100 days. I know a lot of people feel complacent about this, but you really have to look at this trajectory from a historical perspective to understand why this level of growth is so destructive. Yes, national debt has existed since our country's inception, but it followed a somewhat slower path before. For example, the jump from 31 trillion to 32 trillion took about 8 months. 8 months. Now we're seeing $1 trillion every 100 days. This is a huge red flag. It's unsustainable, and this level of growth is only expected to continue, according to many economists. And even global bankers are starting to worry about what this means for the future of the US dollar and the US economy. Listen to what JP Morgan's CEO, Jamie Dimon, said about US debts and deficits.
America is spent a lot of money, and during COVID and after COVID, and our deficit's 6% now. That's a lot, but obviously that drives growth. So any country can borrow money and drive some growth, but it may not always lead to good growth. So I think America should be quite aware that we got to focus on our fiscal deficit issues a little bit more, and that is important for the world. So yeah, that did drive some of the growth.
Is that a big warning? Do you think there's a comeuppance to come in the next couple of years? Which
I don't think it's a big comeuppance. I don't think it's in the next couple of years, but I think it's why we have higher inflation and sticky inflation. And I think, if you want to do a great job in your country and you have a 6% deficit and 100% debt to GDP, this can go on for a while, but the sooner we focus on it, the better. So I'm hoping that, the government really focuses on how can we reduce that deficit and still have good growth, but how can we reduce that deficit? At one point, it'll cause a problem, and why should you wait? Because the problem will be caused by the market. And then you'll be forced to deal with it, and probably in a far more uncomfortable way than if you dealt with it to start.
So what do you think? Should we heed his warning about unchecked deficit spending? This debt, which is just multiplying at an exponential rate, could very well lead to a crash of the US dollar. You see, previously the US would just pay off old debts, issuing new bonds and securities. But today, foreign investors are well aware of the debt problem that the US is facing, narrowing the market for US bonds and security. Listen to what Congressman Thomas Massie just had to say as he spoke to Tucker Carlson about the real threat to the US dollar. It's unmistakable.
At some point, they're going to quit using our dollars as reserve currency. I mean, I watched your interview with Putin, and one of the things, whether you hate him or not, one of the things he said that is true is when we sanctioned him, before we sanctioned Russia, 70% of their transactions were in US dollars. And after the sanctions, it's less than 20% of their transactions are in US dollars. So what we're doing with all these sanctions, ironically, we're shooting ourselves in the foot every time we sanction a country and say you can't use our currency to have a transaction. We're taking away our ability to charge them 3% for that transaction, because when we print 3% more dollars, we're just taking that money.
And we're also sending a really clear signal, which is the dollar's not safe for you.
Right.
It's the reserve currency because it's a safe haven, because it's a stable country. It's the most stable country in the world, and we're not going to weaponize the dollar because that would. But suddenly we are.
The date of today is an important date. And the reason that's important is just yesterday at Davos, Switzerland, the IMF stood up and said, The world economy is heading into the worst economic headwinds since World War II. The worst.
All hell is breaking loose in America as more and more people can't keep up with their bills. And new reports show that many are resorting to desperate measures to be able to get by. The cost of living in the United States is rising much faster than workers' paychecks, and our standard of living is rapidly deteriorating. Our country has reached a stage where only the elites are thriving, while everyone else is being financially eviscerated. For most people, it's been a real fight just to be able to put enough food on the table to feed their children. At this point, the majority of the population is deep in debt, and record high interest rates are only adding to people's problems. Millions of hard-working Americans feel like they're drowning. Sadly, many of them don't even realize that the game was designed against them and in benefit of just the few. At the moment, about 2/3 of Americans considered middle class say they're facing economic hardship and don't anticipate a change for the rest of their lives. That's according to a recent poll commissioned by the National True Cost of Living Coalition. In a study of 2,500 adults, 65% of people who earn more than 200% of the federal poverty level, that's at least $60,000 for a family of four, often considered middle class, revealed that they are struggling financially in 2024. A sizable share of higher-income Americans also feel financially insecure. The survey shows that a quarter of people making over 5 times the federal poverty level, an annual income of more than $150,000 for a family of four, are worried about paying their bills on time. Many Americans are still gasping for air financially, highlights Jennifer Jones Austin, Chief Executive Officer of the Federation of Protestant Welfare Agencies. They simply don't have the breathing room to plan beyond their present needs. Researchers also found that nearly 40% of respondents are unable to plan beyond their next paycheck, and 46% don't even have $500 saved. At the same time, more than half said it's difficult to manage current levels of debt. It's no secret that making ends meet is getting increasingly harder for everyone, but some groups are being hit harder than others. The 2024 Financial Literacy Survey by Go Banking Rates has shown that nearly 40 million Americans do not currently bring in enough money to cover their bills, and 46% of the population is barely bringing in enough to cover their bills. The generations struggling the most are Generation X, between 44 and 59 years of age, and baby boomers, who are between 60 and 78. Let's take a closer look at the survey's findings. Out of younger Generation X's, who are 45 to 54 years old, 17% claim they don't make enough money to cover their bills. Out of older Generation X's, who are 55 to 59, 18% don't earn enough money to get by. Meanwhile, out of younger boomers, who are 60 to 64, 18% are unable to cover their monthly expenses. The same is true for 7% of older boomers aged 65 or more. Amongst those who report being able to pay their bills, close to half, 48%, say they are barely scraping by. Aaron Saxena, founder and CEO of MDRN Capital, said that Generation X's face unique financial challenges compared to other generations. He explained that Generation X is considered the sandwich generation, which means they're caught between supporting their adult children and aging parents, including those residing in retirement homes. They also may have learned financial habits from the baby boomers, who we are learning may not have been the most fiscally responsible, Saxena argued. Boomers faced a lot of economic downturns and may not have prioritized their finances, forcing Generation Xers to figure out finances by themselves. The executive added that boomers don't have the best record economically due to the financial and economic turmoil present during their working years. The downturns of the economy, unstable markets, and fluctuating employment during their peak working years have left many boomers with little retirement savings and limited financial security, he explained. Not to mention the increase in healthcare costs that they may be encountering now. Unfortunately, cash-strapped Americans will have to tighten their budgets even further because another monthly expense is about to go up in price. While the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration forecasts above normal temperatures for most of the U.S. in the coming months, experts are warning that summer energy prices will be even more unaffordable. The cost of cooling continues to increase as rising summer temperatures continue to break national records, said Mark Wolf, NEATA Executive Director. The price of oil, which influences the price of electricity, recently cracked $85 per barrel, reaching the highest level since October amid Mid-East tensions. J.P. Morgan analysts expect oil to hover nearly $90 this month, but acknowledge there's a risk that prices will head near $100 by September. Extreme heat causes more deaths each year than any other weather event, including floods, hurricanes, and tornadoes, according to the National Weather Service. The cost of summer cooling is going up due to the unprecedented rising of summer temperatures, the executive added. At the moment, more than 1 out of 6 households, or 21.12 million families, are already behind on paying their energy bills, NEATA reported. The national average balance rose to a record $20.3 billion in December from $17.7 billion at the start of 2023. Now in March, the percentage of families with children who struggled to pay their energy bills also jumped to 25.6%, suggesting the end of the enhanced child tax credits, as well as other pandemic income support programs, are having a direct impact on their ability to pay basic expenses, Wolf said. With bills piling up on top of each other, consumer debt levels are soaring. On Friday, Chicago Federal Reserve President Austin Goolsbee said that the central bank is concerned about the rate of consumer delinquencies or missed or late payments on expenses such as auto loans, credit card bills, and rent. If the delinquency rate of consumer loans starts rising further, that's often a leading indicator for things are about to get worse, he said at a moderated panel hosted by the Society for Advancing Business Editing and Writing. Over the last quarter, credit card debt rose by $143 billion. The rate at which credit cards and auto loans are transitioning into delinquency have continued to top pre-pandemic levels. In fact, delinquency transition rates rose for all debt types, with the exception of student loans. The pickup in credit card debt and delinquencies is consistent with the idea that consumers, particularly those within the bottom of the income and wealth distributions, are running out of surplus savings and turning back to credit to finance their spending, wrote Evercore ISI in a Monday note. Last month, Wells Fargo conducted a study asking how Americans are faring financially in the current economy, and 67% said they're cutting back on spending. Additionally, almost half, or 45%, say they've put some life plans on hold. A third, 35%, have dipped into their savings or investments. And almost two-thirds, 62%, say that after paying their bills, they have little left over for extras. The data tells us that Americans, no matter who they are uncertain about the sustainability of their financial lives, said Michael Learsh, head of advice and planning for Wells Fargo. This growing uncertainty is putting many families on edge. Desperate times lead to desperate measures, and new reports uncover the explosive rise in criminal offenses across the country. In the world's wealthiest nation, many people are stealing to survive. Law enforcement reports show that theft rates have more than tripled since 2021. This is especially true for retail theft. As a consequence, many companies are having to lay off their employees and shut down stores in response to this alarming trend. More than 2,600 retail stores have been closed this year, and many of them were shuttered because they have become unprofitable due to the relentless rise in shoplifting cases. Over the past couple of years, CEOs have been complaining very loudly about it, but local governments have been failing to address the problem. Recently, Walmart CEO warned rampant retail theft would lead to more store closures and higher prices. Target CEO said it was costing the chain upward of $1 billion. Meanwhile, Home Depot's finance chief called it a consistent pressure that the chain is tackling every day. With a backdrop of viral videos showing brazen thieves, crime has become a common theme on retailers' quarterly earnings calls. Executives often mention a phrase called shrink, inventory missing for one reason or another as a factor behind poor financial results. Now, this list includes big names like Macy's, Best Buy, Dick's Sporting Goods, TJ Maxx, Dollar General, and so on. The issue is getting worse year after year. Official reports reveal that revenue lost to theft has been steadily rising since 2016, and shrink is now costing our retailers more than $100 billion a year. To put that in perspective, that's about the size of Russia's entire military budget for 2024. No wonder why so many famous brands are filing for bankruptcy this year. We've never seen anything like this before. Just in the first 4 months of 2024, retailers in New York City have filed more than 21,000 shoplifting complaints. That's a 5% increase over last year's obscene 20,552. More than 41% of the 2024 crimes are concentrated in Manhattan. Full-year numbers since 2021 have jumped from 43,892 to 59,137. That's an increase of almost 35%. And the real problem is surely far higher, considering that many exhausted merchants don't even bother to report incidents anymore. Conditions are even worse on the West Coast. In California, store manager Amber Jolly says that businesses in Santa Monica are closing left and right because of all this looting going on. The system is broken. Nothing is being done about it, she stressed. As the economic recession deepens, more chaos is about to erupt all around us. It's hard to imagine what things will be like once tens of millions of people feel like they've nothing left to lose. It seems that we're marching towards a horrifying societal meltdown. Most of the population is not even close to ready for what is coming. With inflation making every aspect of our daily lives even more difficult, financial analysts are saying this is the terminal phase of the current credit cycle, and what's ahead will be even more devastating. During an interview with Bloomberg, Mark Spitznagel, Chief Investment Officer of Universal Investments, said that we're witnessing the greatest credit bubble in human history. Credit bubbles end, he says. They pop. There's no way to stop them from popping, he emphasized, adding that the Fed has brought the economy to a place where there's no turning back. Spitznagel is right. There really is no turning back now. The U.S. government has broken the greatest economic machine in the history of the world. What is next for us is a tremendous amount of pain. So those who think that things are bad now should just wait until we're in the middle of a full-blown recession. Ladies and gentlemen, we are entering a time when our economic slide will become an economic avalanche. And once things start falling apart, the collapse will be brutal.